Hi, I'm Spencer Rotenberg, Director of Operations here at RREAF. Welcome to this session of RREAF Academy. Today we're diving into operations, where I'll be sharing how you can utilize the tools and best practices of operations in your daily lives. I'll explain how you can drive real, measurable value by improving flows within your specific department. Let's get started. All right, as you guys may know, my name is Spencer Rotenberg. I'm the Director of Operations here at RREAF Holdings. What I'm gonna be talking to you guys today a little bit about is what is operations? And I'm also gonna talk to you guys a little bit of how I think you guys should be thinking as an employee kind of in your daily lives. But the very first thing I'm probably gonna tell you is probably something that's gonna be a little shocking, is that I shouldn't have a job. What I do is relatively common sense that most employees should just be implementing operations in their own daily lives. Okay, statistically speaking, 90% of the people are not highly motivated intellectual problem solvers in their daily lives. Pretty weird way for me to start this speech, right? Telling you I shouldn't have a job and telling you guys aren't motivated. But what I'm gonna tell you guys, the best thing about this is that it's unbelievably easy to break that mold, and it's so simple just to be very effective at your job. A short background on myself before I even get into what operations is I'm originally from Oregon. Got my undergraduate degree in marketing, got my master's degree here at SMU, then went over 5 years at Goldman Sachs, right here across the street in this big tall building. Spent another year at a senior living property management firm trying to turn it around, and then I came here for RREAF. I've been at RREAF about 1.5 years in the operations department underneath the COO, Jeff Holzman. What is the operations department? Operations department is two things. It's daily problem solving, where I essentially am trying to take other employees and uncover the issues that they're facing, and we collaboratively try to find solutions to resolve them. The other function of it is putting the strategic vision of the company into material effect, right? That comes from the top down. The C-suite's gonna tell me, hey, we have a new initiative that we wanna roll out. Hey, there's a new department we wanna start. Hey, there's a new goal, we wanna see ourselves getting to. So what I need to do is I need to know who are the people involved, what do they need to do, what tools do they need, and how we're gonna build it and build it for scale. The problem that most people have, and most employees naturally have, is that they think too small. And what I mean by thinking too small is that most people will see an issue and only think of a short-term resolution. They'll see a problem that's presented them immediately and find the quickest, least impactful way to solve it right on the spot. Right, I can patch this real quick. If I take a water bottle and I drink like 80–90% of it and there's like 1 inch of water left, and then I take a little drill and I drill a small hole in the bottom of this water bottle, the water bottle is gonna start spewing out and leaking water. If I take a sticky note and I rip off the top sticky part of the sticky note, I can cover that hole and stop the water from leaking, right? I found a problem and I solve it. But what happens when I add more water? Right? When I add more water, volume increases, pressure increases, and that sticky note's not gonna hold anymore. If I shake the water bottle, sticky note's gonna break, right? If someone picks up the water bottle without knowing it's on there, if I add more water, that sticky note's not gonna hold. That right there has proven that my solution was merely just a patch. It's not a solution. That truly is the foundations of what operations is right there. And to you guys, it's just common sense. But the kicker is that the more complex the problem and the more unknown your tools are that you're using, that doesn't become clear. I can see a water bottle on a sticky note and I instantly know all the different ways it's gonna work and it's not gonna work. I know that's not the best solution, it's just a patch, right? But once you start getting into, I'm using RealPage, I'm using Excel files, I'm doing all these weird words that are in real estate that everyone makes up, right? You get into this aspect of these clear, intuitive, common sense problems and solutions. It's not as clear anymore, but it's always the same. Right? You're always thinking about ways to not patch things, but to actually solve them. How do I do my job? People always ask me, hey Spencer, what do you do for work? Well, what I do is I sit with different departments and I sit down with an individual at that department and I say, hey, show me what you do. They'll start to walk me through their process and I'll sit next to them and I'll say, well, wait, why do you do that? And they may give me a rational, reasonable response. And I say, proceed. And then I'm gonna stop them again. I'm gonna say, well, wait, why do you do that? And they're gonna give me another response. They may get down 1–2 responses deep with actual rational, rhyme and reason, but every single time, no matter what, I'm gonna ask them, well, why do you do that? And they're gonna come up with the exact same sentence 100% of the time. Well, that's just how I was trained. Everyone's gonna say that same thing to you. And right there, I got them. I instantly know that there's an avenue for me to build an efficiency. And unfortunately, it also means that I'm sitting with someone who's probably never really questioned the fundamentals of their daily work. right? No one's ever sat there and questioned if this was the best practice for them. They're following what they were told to do, and that's good, but I guess to take a step back for a second, I'm not telling you guys right now that this is exactly what you guys need to be doing in your daily lives, or right when you start your work, right when you get your first job, someone's gonna train you, and you should literally follow how that process is being trained to you. Because I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, that's exactly what should be done. What I'm telling you to do is that when you're getting trained, you should always be thinking, man, this part seems pretty long, right? This part seems pretty long. This part seems unnecessarily risky. I feel like some people are gonna mess this up a lot, right? You should be picking apart these procedural moves even while you're being trained. It's probably the best time to do it, because eventually, a few months down the line, you're gonna become like a subject matter expert. You're gonna become a little bit better, and then you're gonna be able to use the skills and know how everything connects to be able to make that process more efficient. That leads into what should you do? And what should you do is really like, what sort of goal should you have? What should you do to reach a level in your career that is, I guess, the best for yourself and your well-being, but also the best for the company? And here's another shocking one. You need to automate yourself out of a job. I bet no one's really probably told you guys that before. Most people fear this sentence because they say, well, why do I want to be responsible for making myself unnecessary? But the real answer there is that you need to be the one that implements the improvements and the processes that eventually automate yourself out of a job. So what did I do? I essentially started beginning to chip away at all the major processes that were taking a long time. I built models to make things more visually aesthetic, I can make faster improvements on them. I navigated all the softwares to know exactly how I can do things in bulk rather than things one at a time. I knew that each project that I was gonna be completing was gonna help myself in my daily life. Right? I knew that once I'm done with this one, I'm gonna save a bunch of time. It's gonna be way easier for me and my team. When I say automate yourself out of the job, right? What does that lead to? That leads to promotions. There's not a single employee that's gonna bring you these initiatives over and over and over again and all these improvements, and they get fired, right? No one's gonna automate themselves to unemployment. You eventually get promoted and you start to oversee these other divisions. You get to start to see these other teams and help work with them and work with their processes and procedures and start to improve the company to make it a bigger, faster, more scalable company as a whole. So what are the 4 things that you can optimize a process for? You can optimize a process for speed, for risk, for money, for scale. Let's talk about each one of these real quick. Speed. Reduce the time for your inputs to yield outputs. This is by far the easiest and most easily measurable optimization that anybody knows. If I take a process from 2 hours to 2 minutes, no one's gonna question whether that time building that project was well spent. But the philosophical question that you really need to be asking yourself is when I improve processes for speed is, what do those hours saved really help me do? I guess there's 2 things, right? There's one, that's your well-being. And you'll eventually start getting this aspect. I know you guys are in college right now, but you'll eventually build those more time to spend, leave work early, spend it with family and friends. Then there's like the nerdy side of it, whereas I call it the Spencer nerdy side of it, is where I say I save 2 hours for speed, and I've effectively given myself 2 more hours to solve more processes. You have a concept that you're gonna learn, and I like to call it bleed. That 2 hours that you saved is not absolute. The 2 hours that you saved is gonna be your other daily job, your other daily functions are gonna bleed into that 2 hours that you just saved, right? You may have been sitting there where somebody had just, maybe a month or 2 ago, someone came to your department and goes, hey, can you guys do this now? Can you probably maybe perform this function or maybe help us with this? And you had to put your hands up and you say, oh, sorry, like my team's tapped out, right? We are max capacity, we can't do it. Oh, now you can. You just saved 2 hours and they know it. From a ratio perspective, I don't know if this is gonna be 1 for 1, you don't need to write this down, but I mean, I think it's like every hour I save in true process time, I'm really saving like 5 minutes in absolute time. So what does that mean? You literally need to keep improving more and more procedures over and over and over again until you have no more hours to improve upon. Because in the bigger picture of that is that you're really saving, you effectively have stopped saving time for yourself and you're saving time for your company at the end of that too. Let's talk about risk. Reducing the room for human error. Speaking like I'm from Baltimore. Monetary risk would be, hey, this process, if I mess this process up, we're gonna lose thousands of dollars. You have reputational risk where, hey, if I mess this process up, it's gonna look bad in the public ether, or I'm gonna lose some clients, right? Some of my clients, or they're gonna start talking on Twitter or X. You have legal risk, where if I mess this process up, we're gonna get sued. If I mess this process up, we're gonna get some fines. Then you have physical risk. You don't really have physical risk in a corporate job like this, but physical risk, right? If one of these guys messes up one of their processes, they might lose a finger. Or worse, money. Money is prevalent in every single one of kind of our risks we were talking about, right? If I reduce a processing speed, right, I've saved so many hours of work, well, I pay somebody less in payroll, right? You can put a money factor in there. If I solve a process for legal, right, and I don't get sued, well, I save money too. But there's two kind of categorical formats where money is in its own, and this is just my opinion, in its own regard. Optimizing for money is essentially where if you want to reduce the amount of excess output that pulls any cash from your company's wallet. So you can think of it in two ways, and a lot of people argue me on this, and I'm indifferent, right? You can reduce expenses or you can make more money. Operations is sometimes a concept of we're not making money, but losing less money is also the same thing as you made more money, right? Let's say you're in a food processing company for mangoes. You're the ones that's trying to strip it from the husk and take out the seed, and you're trying to get as much mango. I don't know if you ever try to cut a mango, it's really hard. There's so much mango left on that seed and in those things, you're like, dang, I'm not good at what I do. But if I'm a company that mass produces these mangoes and they're stripping them, they literally have excess waste when they're throwing away this excess, these pieces of fruit and these peels and stuff that have mango on them. So if I increase the efficiency of my process for getting more mango out, I have more product to sell and I'm making more money, right? That's reducing waste. At Goldman, another example, kind of the opposite of this, is that if we delivered, and I'm gonna keep this high level, if we delivered a bond to somebody, if someone delivered bonds to us, say we were buying bonds, and we didn't know what trade that was for. I know it sounds weird, but you have to kind of get this. If you didn't recognize the trade, you have what's called trade matching. 50 million bonds sits on my portal, and it's sitting there. We get charged every 60 seconds by our clearing agent that sits there, that trade sits unmatched. And this happens in mass volume. And that causes, that's every 60 seconds, you tack it up over a couple hours, you're in the multiple tens of thousands of dollars in just fines. I built out a model that will improve the speed of matching. I improved it so drastically over the course of time that at the end of the year, it saved the company $5 million. Of course being is that I was reducing the excess waste. I was sitting there wasting away as it sat on that portal, and money was going out in fines consistently. Scale, last one. Scale is, I think, the most important format of optimization, because no matter what project you're working on, even if it encompasses all three of these, you should always be sitting there trying to think of a solution and whispering in the back of your head, is this gonna scale? Where is this process gonna break? Can I ensure that if I throw let's say 2 years from now, we double in size and I throw a bunch of volume at it, is that gonna cause the cracks? Right? Is my patch gonna break? There's simple things that can trip you up, right? As some simple examples, right, to kind of keep you guys on that, like one thing you may uncover in your daily life in Excel is there's a lot of times where you'll download a report. The report has certain columns in a specific way, right? But maybe every time I export it, it's set up differently. I know there's a lot of times where you might get a personal, your real page is set up one way and someone else's real page is set up the other way because they gave you that customization. Well, if I build out a process where I export from real page and it reads columns, A, B, and C in a specific manner, well, what happens when my volume increases and now 3 other people are doing it, but all 3 other people have their own custom report views set up differently? Your Excel patch does not work anymore because your formulas are gonna break, right? What happens if you build something and you build it down formulas to row 1,000? Well, what happens in 2 years when you have 10,000, right? What's that gonna do? This is simple stuff, but these are simple things that you can do to optimize yourself. If you aren't thinking for scale, if you came to me with a solution, you're not thinking for scale, I think that process, that improvement is completely useless. All right, so I'm coming to the conclusion here. And I told you guys at the very beginning, unbelievably simple to be the most effective operational employee you can be. And it's so simple, in fact, that it actually boils down to 3 words. I wonder if. I wonder if I can do this in bulk. I wonder if I can get the data straight from the source. I wonder if I don't have to send every email one by one, if I can blast all these emails out with one button. You have to be curious enough to want to know if there's a better way to do something. And you can always start that sentence with, I wonder if. Take the time to research it too. Google, YouTube. And I think even better, get on the phone, right? No, people don't do that as much anymore, right? For real page, get on the phone, call the real page rep and use these words, right? You call Keely or whatever it is, you call and you say, hey, I was wondering, we were wondering if, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And they're gonna tell you. They're either gonna tell you, oh yeah, you didn't know you could do this, or you can do it like this. Or they're gonna say, no, wow, great idea. We're gonna put that into our next patch coming up in Q2, right? Once again, in your head, I know what I wanna see. I wonder if it can be done this way. I'm gonna save time for myself in the future. What I'm ultimately getting at here is that you shouldn't settle, okay? Don't settle. Don't be a clock in and clock out employee. All you have to truly do is be proactive and be curious and just wonder a little bit to make sure that all of your procedures and processes are the best you can be. And that is the end. Do y'all have any questions?
You mentioned like Goldman Sachs, some examples there, but I'm just curious, like, if you have a good example of something that you've done here at RREAF.
We built certain foundational Excel files when you were trying to renovate a unit or an apartment unit, right? It was a conversation of where an asset manager would talk to property management, see what units were open, but we already kind of knew based off of these people who was supposed to be terminating their lease. And so we wanted to make it concrete to where the asset manager was presented a list of these are the units that are going to be available. You need to be renovating 5 of them if you're in the month of May, right? You need to be renovating 2 of them if you're in the month of June, right? We've had issues where we accidentally renovated, ADA handicap units because we didn't realize what it was. So we essentially built a process to reduce the risk of renovating the wrong units and renovating or just not renovating a unit that was supposed to be, or renovating units that we're supposed to be getting better premiums on, right? So we built an Excel file that just gives you the answer. Nomenclature is going to be a big thing you're going to have problems with. When I say nomenclature, I mean like the way that people write things out is you may have something that's called the Park at Aventino on one form, and somebody else in RealPage calls it just Park at Aventino. So if I'm trying to build some sort of efficient solution that keys them together, my formulas aren't gonna see it, right? That's the word the, or if a big one you're gonna see is if you're working with entities. Some people put a comma LLC and some people don't. The concept here is that the computer is only as smart as you can make it, right? So you need to be like, well, what happens when half these people put comma LLC on this one and they put no comma? So I gotta find a better solution that's gonna make these keys match.
So you have kind of a lot of experience across different areas of operations like corporate management, risk analysis, stuff like that. What area do you find yourself most gravitated towards, and how did you improve in those areas where you weren't necessarily as well prepared or as skilled as you felt?
Being a curious person, I think, is always rule number 1. So you don't actually have to be a subject matter in anything, or a subject matter expert in anything, as long as you can. It's like people talk about, people say like I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. In an operational role and perspective is if you're curious enough, you can ask enough of the right questions to lead. You need to eventually get to the aspect of where you know what you want your result to be, right? I know what I want to see in the end. So I need to make sure I ask the right questions that point me in the avenues to lead me down that route. Ask rhetorical questions that you already know the answer to, but you want someone to confirm it to you. That wraps up this session on operations. I hope this gave you memorable insight around how to think when trying to optimize performance across every area of your work. Thanks for joining me. And for those watching online, be sure to check out other episodes in the RREAF Academy series for more insights into how we operate, build, and grow. See you next time.